Now we're going to stay in the field of large companies with our next speaker, who is Lukasz Kowalik. Kowalik. I'm not sure I pronounced the last name correctly. I'm sorry, Lukasz. Head of the innovation think tank at Merck Group. Lukasz is currently the head of the innovation think tank. He leverages the expertise of Merck's 3 business sectors. Innovation at the interfaces, so between performance materials, healthcare, and life science, to enable cross-industry innovation through small and diverse groups of innovators at the company's new innovation center in Darmstadt. Previously, Lukasz worked as an innovation consultant at Now Labs, a boutique firm in San Francisco. We will see with Lukasz how innovation can be generated from the inside also, like with Colleen, how a big company, such as Merck, consciously looked for ways to connect the dots and to cross the bridges of traditional organizational structures. So often we talk about silos and breaking the silos. Well, we'll really hear about this with Lukasz. Lukasz has never been afraid to take risks, and as part of venturing into uncharted territory, some years back, he ended up singing at Carnegie Hall in New York City. Quite an accomplishment. Great. Please join me in welcoming Lukasz.
I was a part of a 300-person choir, but still. So thank you. It's really a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to more discussions in the future. I'm looking at innovation interfaces, and this is something to think about. Creating interfaces for exchange is really important. Kind of managing the serendipity that happens or increasing it. And if using a metaphor from another industry, interfaces are important in catalysis, right, to make anything happen. So a lot of catalysts in chemistry are, in fact, interface increasers. So this is kind of what we're trying to do, and I explain why and how. Merck is a company that actually has 3 large business sectors. So there's another company in the US with a similar name you might have heard of. But we don't just focus on healthcare. It's an important part of our business. We also have a life science sector, which produces our lab equipment, research equipment, and also biopharma production equipment, as well as performance materials sector that produces high-performing chemicals, liquid crystals, and probably 10 different Merck products are in your cell phone. So the company grew also a lot through inorganic growth. So these are just the biggest sectors we have, but it's really split into a lot of smaller parts. We recently acquired Sigma Aldrich, a large player in lab sciences. In your companies, you might have a different kind of sectors or different kinds of groups, or sometimes referred to as silos. We don't like to say that, but unfortunately that can happen too. And what is important to say is that the innovation within the sector is going well. We spend a lot of money on R&D. We keep on producing new products. But there really is a case to make, and the board noticed this and was kind of growing throughout the management, that we should increase the interfaces, increase the synergies between the sectors if they indeed exist, to see what can be gained through leveraging this expertise in chemistry across the different topics. So like I said, this is the spending in healthcare for the 3 different, in healthcare, as you see, the healthcare is the most spending, that's the most expensive part. But life science and performance materials also spending quite well. So how can we drive innovation between the sectors? How can we get people to talk? How can we increase those interfaces and also go beyond in the world? Sometimes you have to catch opportunities as they come along. Merck is a family-owned company. It is, by some measures, the oldest pharmaceutical company in the world. It's been around for 350 years. And that kind of also gives us some future outlook, right? So we have, we want to, the Merck family is in its 12th and 13th generation. We want it to happen for, 350 more years, so really preserve this long-term outlook. And that kind of synergized, a need to mark an anniversary in a certain way and a drive to rediscover the future, synergize with this thinking about innovation. And this catalyzed, in what people like to do, a new building, right? But it's not just a building, it's a building with a purpose. It's the Innovation Center, and this is actually taken straight from our company presentation. That is the Future Innovation Center. Is currently, I think this doesn't work. So the building you see over there, the big one that's, it's growing every day. We get scared looking at it because it's 6 times the size of the current one. And this shows you the current innovation center. So they really build a small modular building to prototype, right? So we are really sort of living this gospel and saying, okay, we're going to find solutions, find stable solutions in the small building, using sort of smaller budgets, smaller teams, and then just scale up. And we're getting towards the end of the life cycle of the smaller building now. And sort of I came to the whole picture right when this building was just erected, and it was the building and a deck of slides. So I can tell you what happened then. And the mission of the whole center, this is framed by Crystal Fuels, our Chief Innovation Officer, is that we really are looking to generate new business, right? We're not looking to be just innovation theater, and that's always a danger to any kind of innovation group, to be for show. And we're very cognizant of that, not to just be a playground, but really to think about generating new businesses or transforming sectors. But it does have to happen through creating a certain kind of innovation culture, like even this talk about interfaces. I mean, that is new to people. It's the fact that you have synergies, that is not obvious, because actually sometimes you don't, right? That's something you have to always remember, not to create spurious value. And at the same time, drive sort of global reputation, and as you notice, this whole slide deck is also quite colorful. That's part of our mission also, to brand ourselves now as a sort of bold and vibrant company that's not afraid to go with science and technology or wherever it may lead us. And this is a slide that's coming from sort of from how I see innovation, and we see it at Innovation Center too. This is kind of innovators' philosophy, and we heard a tremendous talk from Colleen how innovation and sales can really change a perception of a company, and really its values and its impact on the world, the most important metric. A lot of people think that innovation is driven purely by R&D, right? It should be left in labs or to some sort of lone inventors. And it's really not. I mean, this is a quote from the Red Queen in Lewis Carroll's book. She said that to Alice, who says that, she cannot think about impossible things. Like, no, well, you haven't perhaps tried yet. And she said that herself, she can believe as many as six impossible things before breakfast. And of course, believing in impossible things is not innovation, right? That's maybe one aspect of it. But we believe that a lot of people, maybe not everyone, but really most people in our company can be empowered to be innovators in one way or another, or at least bring insights that will enable innovation. And the Innovation Center, as it stands now, has the structure of several pillars. I won't go through all the details. I just want to talk a little bit about a couple of things in the detail. But it's about having external contact with the world, really internally driving the culture through Innovator Academy, through what we call a think tank, which I'll explain in a second, to having real innovation projects with real budget. So really being a dedicated, not just creating ideas, but following through with them, and also hosting external companies in an accelerator sort of format. So we're trying to bring external and internal within the headquarters, right? So we're not trying to set it up somewhere outside. Okay, let this happen and brew and stew, I don't know, in Silicon Valley or somewhere else, but really try and create an ecosystem in Darmstadt, which is a challenge. I mean, how many of you have been to Darmstadt? Probably not that many, but we're putting it on a map. So I'll explain, it's an example. Think tank is dear to my heart. It's kind of my baby, what I started at Innovation Center. So think tanks are our ways of really creating a sort of small but important interfaces. These are essentially, I call it a reality show a little bit sometimes. You take 4 people from across the business, you put them in a room, you lock them and throw away the key. I mean, not quite like that, you don't lock them, but you literally pull 4 people from across the world. The teams can be very global to work on specific topics. How we choose the topics? Well, this is done by the strategy group as a whole. Look at the so-called innovation fields, and they can be driven, by fit to Merck, by disruptive potential. Could be something that's a threat, a global trend, etc. Then, like I said, we recruit the team, and we do a company-wide call. Anyone can apply, and boy, we do have to fight some battles with managers on that one, because we pull them out for 3 months full time, right? So they really, we negotiate, we plead, we sometimes threaten. Although we try not to, so that to get people for 3 months to work on one specific topic full time. This is really, really important. And then that team works, first connects and explores, then it filters and reviews the idea they had, and they come up with about, sometimes hundreds of ideas. Then they evolve and pivoted, and then set up as very specific actionable innovation projects or pilots, right? So this is important. They're not meant to be analysis, not to write a fat report, but rather to come up with some very specific implementations. And right now we have a group working on blockchain, for example, that are already coming up with some very, very interesting sort of use cases to then incubate an innovation center. And the external engagement here is also important, as well as internal. We have about 50,000 employees, so it's a large company, not the largest, but really finding out, say, what's going on in organic chemistry in such an organization can be quite a challenge. And well, what kind of ideas come out? I'll give you a sample of, this is not a think tank idea, but it's a sort of very similar one. So from this cross-contamination and cross-pollination of different sectors and different ideas. So cataract surgery is the most common surgery in the world. And this is where a lens gets cloudy and needs to be replaced. The intraocular lens needs to be replaced with an implant. However, there's often an issue afterwards with a simple lens that you need to wear glasses afterwards to correct for either whatever the curve of the cornea you had, or perhaps the lens was placed exactly correctly. So there's a pain point there, starting with a customer pain point. Now, Merck is not really an ophthalmology company. I mean, not at all. We don't do that kind of thing. But we had someone who was working on similar kind of polymers that are related to liquid crystals, which is our core competency. And they realized that they can change properties of this polymers using a laser. Right? So optical properties can be adjusted. And we are now in the process of testing these lenses. So we're just starting, so proof principle is working fine. We're just starting animal trials on them, and we're partnering. If you are interested, you can let me know. But you can have a wide adjustment, sort of range, about 3 diopters. It's a photochemical reaction, like I said, it's driven by a laser, so you can use a laser to adjust the lens when it's in the eye. And we have a really good IP on it. So again, you have a materials scientist, right, coming up with an idea, connecting with the healthcare people, and we then sort of drive that to create a special kind of greenhouse type environment when we really try to take care of the project, back them up with marketing competencies, give them access to key opinion leaders, etc., and really develop in a space that's novel to us. And I dare say, in a normal kind of environment, this project wouldn't necessarily have thrived, because someone would have said, well, I'm sorry, there's no strategic fit in healthcare, or this is not the kind of performance material we work in. So this is something to really think about. And now this is something that I really want to thank Annette for, the phrase corporate immune system. So we were supposed to talk a little bit about the challenges, right? So how difficult it is to kind of make those changes. And it is, I have to say, it has been from the beginning a challenge, not necessarily because there's any ill will on anyone's part, but there is almost like a structural active system that is trying to prevent those changes. And these are some of the kind of topics that we have to deal with, performance management, for example, right? If I want to take someone from a sales team, and I have a really talented salesperson right now on a blockchain team, right? I have to pull them out of a performing sales team, and then manager will necessarily see perhaps a decrease in sales. So obviously they're disincentivized to do things like that, to have people really work on innovation. And it ties in with the middle management point. I mean, a lot of those people are really strongly incentivized in a way that discourages innovation. HR, I mean, being flexible with people, being flexible procurement rules, risk aversion in general. And that ties in with the culture of failure. This is something we shared earlier. In some companies, in some countries, and continental Europe being one of these sort of environments, I mean, it's still difficult to talk about failure as a kind of a positive, empowering, learning thing, right? Failure is mostly seen as failure. And that drives people to avoid any kind of risk-taking. Also personal risk-taking, right? I mean, in Germany also, and a lot of countries, it can be tough to say, well, look, I'm sort of leaving my permanent, cushy job and moving into some sort of less permanent, less structured environment when I'm not really sure if this project is going to pan out or not, 2 years down the line, what I'm going to do with myself, etc. So there is a lot of problems. And I have to say the three key factors that we've found so far that has really worked for us. First, to have really the top management backing, right? So using this, there was an Inception phase at the very beginning when Michal Gamba, head of Innovation Center currently, and a couple of others were convincing the top management. They used this 350th anniversary to kind of really get into their into that sort of long-term thinking. But then it really, really helped us to know that we have the top management backing, that this is something the company really wants to do, innovate across the sectors. Now our CEO is talking about the power of we, so, really uniting the whole company together. But that also translates to budget. That means we're not just a playground, right, but we can fund our projects. Participation, if people resist you, invite them. Right? They will see what it's like. Invite them to a workshop. Let them do something with you. The managers that I talk about that can be resistant to have the people work in the think tank. If we invite them for workshops, if they see what we really do, they realize, well, this is giving value to the company. My employee is not just there having fun in Darmstadt, as ridiculous as it may sound, but they are there creating value and putting good name to my group. And finally, expertise. In a company like ours, a lot of times they are very sort of driven by serious thinkers, people who are science-oriented or management science-oriented. To have that, to kind of really be able to meet them at their own terms or show that you have some sort of expertise, it really kind of helps. So I think this what we found was really quite key. So I wanted to share those things. And I finally wanted to finish with this. This is actually, it's endearing to me. It's done by one of our innovators. It's not a great piece of art, but it shows, it's called Bfree by Michael, and he showed what kind of happens when you really give people the opportunity. Because maybe I want to go back to that point I haven't emphasized enough earlier on. It is really about not just empowering projects, but really it's about changing the mindset of people, letting them play with things, and then have that grow into something that's more serious. Because even if the project fails, that people go back to their roles or move forward. After the think tank, sometimes people don't go back to their jobs, but rather they move. We have someone recently become a head of innovation at a site after participating in that kind of think tank. It really seems to be having already a ripple effect. And we really had our first think tank about a year and some change ago. So it's still a new initiative, and we're really seeing some good effects. But like I said, this is done by one of our guys, and I really like it. Although I'm not quite sure about the space trees at the end of it. All right, and I think this is really it. So thank you. I think I managed before the sign came. Thank you.